I always knew Blueface was pretty stupid. I'm gonna tell you why. Blueface is signed to Wack100 and managed by Wack100. Let me tell you how this works. When you sign to a label, they take at least half already. Then you're getting managed by the guy who owns the label. So of your 50% that you're getting, or less than 50%, he's still taking at least 20% of that too. It's double dipping. You get what I'm saying?
I look at his wife at the time like, excuse me, man, like, would you insist on your son signing this right here? Like, like if I was your son, would you recommend this? She's like, yeah, I would. And I signed at that time. That was like my confirmation.
No lawyer, no nothing.
No lawyer, no nothing.
Okay.
Wack100 was supposed to be Blueface's manager and business partner. But instead, this situation slowly turned into something way darker and way more profitable for one side. For years, Blueface has hinted that millions slipped through his fingers while the person meant to protect him was allegedly playing chess behind the scenes. Let us break down how one of hip-hop's loudest and most controversial managers allegedly ran one of the wildest finesse plays the industry has seen, all hiding in plain sight. Wack100 is a longtime music manager and industry veteran straight out of Los Angeles, known just as much for controversy as for connections. Born Cash Jones, he built his name in the streets long before he ever touched a recording contract. Over the years, he managed major names like The Game and Ray J, always moving loud, aggressive, and unapologetic. But out of every artist tied to him, the Blueface situation might be the most profitable and the most questionable move of his entire career. On the other side, Blueface was just a young dude from Los Angeles who stumbled into fame almost by accident. Born Jonathan Porter, he was deep in street life when his song Oceana randomly caught fire online. At that moment, he had no real understanding of contracts, ownership, or industry traps. He wasn't chasing rap fame, he just went viral being himself, rapping off beat and turning it into a moment nobody could ignore. That lack of experience made Blueface the perfect target for someone seasoned in the industry. You've got a young artist with sudden money, no manager, no lawyer, no business structure, and no protection. He's earning fast but docile. Know how to lock it down or play long-term chess, according to Blueface himself. That's exactly when Wack100 swooped in heavy, sensing an opportunity. The connection reportedly started when Wack100's daughter heard Oceana and put her father onto the record. From there, Wack wasted no time sliding into Blueface's DMs, trying to set up a meeting. But Blueface wasn't comfortable at first, because a quick Google search of Wack100 brought up nothing but chaos, arguments, and non-stop drama. Blueface even admitted later that Wack's reputation alone made him hesitate. He said that when you look Wack up, all you hear is crazy and people warning you about him. On top of that, Wack used to go by Crip Killer Wack back in the day, and Blueface is a Crip, which added another layer of tension. Still, Wack didn't let up at all, kept calling, texting, and pushing for a face-to-face meeting like his life depended on it. At that time, Blueface was doing everything solo. He was booking shows, paying for videos, handling business himself, and learning on the fly. Major labels like Atlantic and Empire were already circling, but Blueface felt like they didn't understand his background or the culture he came from. When someone at Atlantic asked if he was Cry instead of Crip, that was enough to tell him the industry wasn't tuned in. One day while Blueface was chilling at a park in the hood, Wack100 started blowing his phone up again, demanding he'd come to his house. Blueface didn't want to go, but Wack sent a car anyway, forcing the situation forward.
Would you insist on your son signing this right here? Like, if I was your son, would you recommend this? And she said yes.
I look at his wife at the time like, excuse me, man, like, would you insist on your son signing this right here? Like, like if I was your son, would you recommend this? She's like, yeah, I would. And I signed at that time. That was like my confirmation.
No lawyer, no nothing.
No lawyer, no nothing.
Okay.
When Blueface finally pulled up to Wack100's mansion, the impact was instant. He later said, when you see someone who clearly got it, it makes you think, yeah, I want that too. That visual was no accident. Life's stony, the lifestyle, and the success was exactly the move Wack needed to lock Blueface in mentally. The message was clear without being spoken. Stick with me, and this could be your future too. Here's where the situation goes from questionable to straight up alarming. When Blueface arrived, Wack100 already had the contract printed and ready to sign. Think about that for a second. There wasn't a real sit-down, no deep business talk, no breakdown of terms. The paperwork was locked and loaded before any proper discussion even happened, which already raises serious red flags about intent and control. What happened next is the part that still shocks people. Blueface didn't feel right, so instead of trusting Wack directly, he looked at Wack100's wife and asked her a simple but powerful question. He said, "If I was your son, would you want me to sign this?" That moment mattered, because Blueface was clearly searching for honesty, not pressure. Her response was yes, and that single word changed everything. Based on that reassurance alone, Blueface signed the contract immediately. No lawyer involved, no time to read the fine print, no explanation of long-term consequences. He trusted that a mother wouldn't steer him wrong, and that trust became the foundation of a deal that would haunt him financially for years. Here's where the finesse really gets exposed. The contract wasn't just a standard management agreement, it was a combined record deal and management deal under the same person. That's where things tilt heavily in one direction. As the label Wack100 allegedly took 50% of all music earnings straight off the top. Then, as the manager, he took another 20% from what was left. That is, a total of 70% of Blueface's music income going to one person. This setup was later broken down publicly and described as double dipping, because the same individual was collecting money from two roles that are normally kept separate.
I always knew Blueface was pretty stupid. I will tell you why. Blueface is signed to Wack100 and managed by Wack100. Let me tell you how this works. When you sign to a label, they take at least half already. Then you're getting managed by the guy who owns the label. So of your 50% that you're getting, or less than 50%, he's still taking at least 20% of that too. It's double dipping. You get what I'm saying?
In most situations, you either have a label or a manager, not both under the same authority. That separation exists for a reason. A manager is supposed to negotiate the best possible deal for the artist. But how can that happen when the manager is also the one cutting the checks and taking the largest share? For context, typical management fees sit around 15 to 20%, and record deals usually split profits closer to 50/50ths after expenses. This deal flipped that balance completely. Wack100 allegedly structured it so he won on every level, while Blueface was boxed into keeping just 30% of his own earnings. Even worse, these contracts aren't short-term. They usually last for multiple albums and several years, meaning this setup has been draining Blueface's income long after the hype faded. Fast forward to today, and the consequences are hard to ignore. Blueface recently got out of jail and reportedly came home with very little money. That's wild considering he once had platinum records and major visibility in hip-hop. Even his seafood restaurant venture hasn't been performing well, adding more pressure to an already unstable situation. When you're only holding on to a small slice of your income, it's nearly impossible to build long-term stability or investments. Reports suggest Blueface may even be forced to sell his house. Meanwhile, Wack100 continues to showcase wealth and luxury publicly, creating a sharp contrast that fans can't stop noticing. The most brutal part is that Blueface is still locked into this deal. Contracts like this are designed to be extremely hard to escape without massive penalties or expensive legal battles. This is exactly how predatory agreements quietly destroy artists. Not overnight, but slowly, contract by contract, dollar by dollar. Remember, Blueface was extremely young and inexperienced when he signed this deal. He was barely in his early 20s, fresh out the streets, suddenly famous, and had zero understanding of how the music business really works. No mentors, no business education, no protection. That lack of experience made it easy for someone older and more seasoned to step in and control the situation from day one. Wack100 didn't just guide him. He allegedly locked him into a structure that benefited Wack far more than it ever benefited the artist. This wasn't an equal partnership built on trust and balance. It was a one-sided setup where knowledge, power, and leverage all sat on one side of the table. This isn't just about Blueface alone. It speaks to a bigger pattern in the music industry. Older, more experienced businessmen repeatedly target young, naive artists who don't know the rules yet. They flash money, show mansions, create urgency, and push paperwork fast. The goal is always the same: get the signature before the artist gets real advice or starts asking the right questions. Looking back now, the red flags were everywhere. Contract already prepared before negotiations even started. It's a deal that mixed record label power with management authority. No space for legal review, no time to breathe, no neutral third party involved. These are textbook predatory tactics that have trapped artists for decades. The most manipulative move of all was bringing Wack100's wife into the decision. That wasn't random. It was psychological pressure at its finest. It made the situation feel like family advice instead of a high-stakes business agreement. Blueface thought he was getting honesty, when in reality he was being pushed into a trap disguised as trust. This situation proves why industry knowledge is survival, not optional. If Blueface had known basic contract structures or had a lawyer review the paperwork, this entire outcome could have been avoided. A single pause could have changed everything. From Wack100's perspective, he may feel justified because he did help Blueface move through the industry and land bigger opportunities. But taking 70% of someone's earnings crosses every reasonable line, especially when the artist is doing the creative work, taking the public risk, and building the brand with his own name and face. The power dynamic became completely unbalanced. Wack100 allegedly controlled the career, the money, and the business decisions all at once. That's not partnership, that's control. When one person owns the contracts, the income, and the leverage, they can dictate every move without resistance. And once you're locked in like that, the artist becomes dependent instead of empowered. The most frustrating part is that there's almost no easy escape. These deals are built to be ironclad. Breaking them usually means repaying advances, covering legal fees, and sometimes owing more money than the artist even has. So while Blueface struggles financially, sells assets, and deals with legal stress, Wack100 continues collecting his cut. It has millions of dollars over the years that should have stayed with the artist. The biggest lesson here is simple and brutal. Never sign anything without independent legal advice. Trust, loyalty, and vibes don't protect you in contracts. A lot of industry veterans play the mentor role and act like father figures. But real mentorship doesn't involve stripping someone of their future. The mansion, the lifestyle, the success image, all created an illusion that signing meant leveling up. What Blueface didn't realize is that Wack100's wealth wasn't magic, was built by taking massive percentages from multiple artists over time, and the damage goes beyond money. When artists can't build wealth, they can't invest, uplift families, or create generational stability. That keeps them trapped in the same system that profits off their downfall. If Blueface had proper legal representation at the time, this deal would have been flagged instantly. Any experienced entertainment lawyer would have spotted the issues within minutes. A combined record and management deal under one person, percentages stacked that high, and no safeguards for the artist. A good lawyer would VA pushed for separate agreements, or at the very least, slash those numbers down to something reasonable. Industry education matters just as much. If there were stronger resources for new artists explaining basic contract terms and industry standards, Blueface would have known that giving up 70% was outrageous. He would have known that double dipping isn't normal or ethical. Knowledge alone could have protected him from walking straight into this setup. If Blueface had spoken with other artists who already went through management deals, the warnings would have come fast. They would have pointed out the red flags immediately. Having paperwork ready before negotiations, pressure to sign on the spot, no legal review. Simply taking advice from people who'd have been there before could VA saved him millions. Even taking a few days to slow down would have changed everything. Time to research, time to compare deals, time to understand industry standards. That pause alone could have prevented this entire situation. Instead, urgency was created artificially to force a rush decision. That urgency wasn't real. Blueface already had interest from major labels like Atlantic and Empire. Those deals may not have been perfect either. But they almost certainly wouldn't have handed 70% of his income to one individual. The pressure to sign immediately was designed to block better options from even being considered. Now Blueface is living with the consequences of a contract he signed years ago, coming home from jail with little money, struggling to keep business ventures afloat, and having to sell assets just to stay standing. Meanwhile, Wack100 continues to profit from the music Blueface created. The irony is brutal. Blueface's success helped build Wack100's wealth, but the structure of the deal blocked Blueface from building sustainable wealth for himself. It's like working for a company where the boss gets rich while you stay stuck, except quitting isn't an option. Blueface's choices now are limited. He can try to renegotiate, but Wack100 has no incentive to give up a 70% cut. He can try to break the contract, but legal battles and penalties could cost more money than he even has. Or he can keep working under the same terms and hope volume makes up for the loss. Beyond the money, the psychological impact is heavy. When most of your earnings go to someone else, motivation takes a hit, creativity suffers. It's hard to give your best when you know the reward isn't really yours. Other artists are watching this closely. This situation has become a cautionary tale across the industry. It shows exactly why legal protection and education aren't optional. They're survival tools. The relationship between Wack100 and Blueface Docent look like a traditional manager-artist setup. It looks more like ownership than partnership. Real managers work for artists, not over them. They help maximize earnings, not siphon them away. So, this deal is basically an extreme version of a 360 structure. And even most 360 deals don't come close to taking 70% of an artist's earnings. That kind of percentage is excessive by any industry standard, no matter how you slice it. If deals like this ever become normalized, it opens the door to a dangerous future where young artists get squeezed even harder than they already do. Other managers would feel empowered to demand outrageous terms, knowing desperation, hype, and inexperience can push artists into saying yes. Situations like this don't just damage careers, they destroy personal relationships too. Blueface likely trusted Wack100 and viewed him as a mentor figure, someone who was supposed to guide him through the chaos. Now he's realizing that trust may have been used against him from the very beginning, turning guidance into leverage. When an artist can't build real wealth from their own success, the damage spreads far beyond just them. Blueface has kids and family members who should be benefiting from his hard work and visibility. Instead, the majority of that money is flowing elsewhere, leaving the artist scrambling while others profit. The pressure from financial stress, legal problems, and feeling trapped in a bad contract can take a serious toll on mental health. Success is supposed to bring stability and peace, not anxiety and constant struggle. When you're only keeping 30% of what you earn, it's almost impossible to feel secure or motivated. Why give maximum effort when most of the reward isn't yours? That mindset can kill creativity, ambition, and drive. Artists start asking themselves what the point is, and that's how careers slowly fade even when talent is still there. The music industry desperately needs stronger protections for young artists. There should be limits on how much managers and labels can take, especially when dealing with inexperienced talent. Mandatory legal review, cooling off periods, and clear safeguards could prevent impulsive decisions that ruin financial futures. Education is just as important. Artists should be taught contract basics, industry standards, and business fundamentals before they ever touch paperwork. Knowledge shouldn't come after the damage is done. It should come before the signature. Peer support matters too. Experienced artists need to step up and warn newcomers about common traps, fake mentorships, and predatory practices. Too many artists learn the hard way because nobody told them what to watch for. Transparency could change everything. Contracts should clearly state the total percentage being taken and show how it compares to industry norms. Artists deserve to know exactly what they're giving up, in plain language, not buried in fine print. At the end of the day, Blueface is the real victim in this situation. He was a young dude who caught lightning with a viral hit, but instead of that moment setting him up for life, it became the foundation for someone else's wealth. This isn't just one bad deal, it's a systemic problem. The industry has a long history of experienced business players preying on young, unprotected talent. Until that changes, stories like this will keep repeating. The biggest takeaway is simple, but powerful. Knowledge is power, and without it, talent alone isn't enough to protect anyone. If Blueface had understood even the basics of contract terms and industry standards, this entire situation could have been avoided. Knowledge would have been his first line of defense. Every young artist stepping into the industry needs to understand one simple rule: trust, but always verify. You can trust people, but you must confirm what they're saying through independent sources, lawyers, and real industry education. Just because someone looks successful, talks confidently, or lives a flashy lifestyle doesn't mean they have your best interests at heart. Appearances can be misleading. Many of the biggest losses in music history happened because artists assumed success equals honesty, when in reality it often equals leverage. When making business decisions, artists have to think long-term, not just about the moment. A deal that feels exciting today can quietly drain millions over the years. Short-term comfort can turn into long-term regret if the numbers aren't right and the structure is flawed. Hopefully, situations like this push the industry toward real change. Maybe future artists will be better protected, better educated, and less vulnerable. And maybe predatory behavior will start getting exposed and questioned instead of being normalized behind closed doors. Unfortunately, Blueface's legacy may end up being tied to this contract situation just as much as his music. But if his experience opens eyes and saves even one young artist from falling into the same trap, then something positive can come from this mess. So here's the final warning to any young artist watching this. Learn from Blueface's mistake. Get legal representation. Understand every word of your contract, and never let anyone rush you into signing something you don't fully understand. Your future financial security is decided long before the fame fades. The music industry can be powerful, creative, and life-changing when done right. But it can also be ruthless, predatory, and destructive when knowledge is missing. Stay educated, stay protected, and always remember, if a deal sounds too good to be true, it probably is.